Welcome to a Listen to Learn episode of the Share Life podcast. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and today I'm speaking with the author of the book Claim Your Dream Life: How to Retire in Paradise on a Shoestring Budget by Dawn Fleming. Dawn, say hello.
Good to be here, Jason. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Dawn is the founder of a global coaching company, Midlife in Paradise. She is proof that you can reinvent your life at any stage. After losing nearly everything in the 2008 financial crash, Dawn and her husband, Tom, set sail on their dream adventure, sailing from California to Florida through the Panama Canal. Later, they relocated to live their midlife in paradise on the tropical island of Isla Mujeres, Mexico. Did I get that right? Close it up. With background as a successful real estate entrepreneur, licensed attorney, and mentor to thousands of business owners, Dawn combines decades of experience with her transformational journey to guide others towards the freedom, joy, and fulfillment they deserve. So, Dawn, to get us started, let's dive into your story. Tell us about the 2008 financial crash, losing everything, and we'll tease it out from there.
Wow, that was a wild ride there, Jason. I I'm sure there's people listening that have been blindsided before. Like you didn't see something coming, like a meteor strikes, and you're like, "Whoa, what was that?" And that was kind of what happened to me and my husband. We were living large in Orange County, California. 2008, we bought our dream boat. The flyer had hung on our refrigerator for 5 years. That dream finally came true. Tom's
How
business was rocking and rolling. I'm sorry.
how old were you guys at the time?
So he was, I think I was 48. He was 58. He's 10 years
Okay.
older than I am.
Yeah.
And we had just bought a business with a partner, and it was doing well. It was underperforming. We were working on turning around. We were doing a pretty good job. He was doing high-end surveillance systems as an electrical engineer for governments like Port of LA, Dallas Fort Worth Airport, the White House, overseas projects. I mean, he basically would answer the phone, go away, because he was just kind of a one man show. Then, and I took some equity out of my house to buy the business, and we had a nice little house in Orange County. And then I bought a couple of rental properties in the Panhandle in 2005, and everything was going great. We are probably making about $250,000, which isn't that much in Orange County, but it was good for us. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, things just collapsed. Tom's phone stopped ringing. They kept pushing the projects out further to the right because the governments went broke. I had transitioned out of practicing law. I was actually doing employee benefits with a legal services company. And they, like a voluntary employee benefit, all my companies were having massive layoffs, closing their doors. My tenants moved out of the houses that I had in the Panhandle. I couldn't rent them, and I was deeply underwater. All of a sudden, we went from doing great to suddenly owing over $1.1 million on property that was suddenly worth 600,000. And I, having a background in real estate and mortgage banking, I did not see the great financial crisis coming. I had no idea all the stuff that I'm sure you or your listeners have seen the movie The Big Short. If you haven't, watch it. It's still going on, I'm sad to say, which is one of the reasons we have invested in Mexico. But it really blindsided us. And we spent 2 years. I gained like 40 pounds. One day I called Bank of America. They transferred me 10 times and eventually hung up on me when I was trying to get a loan modification. Because as soon as they found out I was an attorney, those $10 an hour employees didn't want to talk to me. And so it was like I couldn't do anything about it. And I'll never forget, this is the power of coaching. I had a call with the guy. I never even hired him. I never even paid him any money. It was like a complimentary consultation call. And he just asked me one simple question. He goes, Dawn, what would your life look like if you were not emotionally attached to your real estate? And I hadn't missed a payment on anything in my life until that point. I had perfect credit. I prided myself on that. And I thought for a second, and I told the guy, I'm like, you know what? My life would be pretty good if it wasn't for this damn real estate problem, right? And he's like, well, okay, that's a choice. And I was like, it was like somebody flipped a switch. And at that point, I said, you know what? I've been trying to fix this problem. I've been working on it for 2 years. I'm not getting anywhere. And we had wanted to get out of Southern California and go to Florida, but we were waiting. I mean, we basically pulled the equity out of the house and then we're going to sell it the next year. But this happened. And so we were stuck. And finally it was like, I don't think this market's coming back anytime soon. So we literally like, almost put the key under the door, jumped on the sailboat, sailed 5,000 miles through the Panama Canal and just let go. Like jump and the net appears. We didn't really, we moved our cars and sold a lot of stuff, but moved our stuff into storage. So it was waiting for us in the panhandle and just started over. Tom got a job the first time in 25 years. He at 60 years old. Was nobody hiring 60-year-olds in SoCal. So he landed this amazing job. I basically was practicing law. I still owned the properties when I got there, which astounded me. I'm like, why have they not foreclosed on this? Well, about that time, 60 Minutes started coming out with the robo signing and all the fraud and all that. And I was like, and I started digging in and I was shocked. I couldn't believe what had happened to quote unquote my industry in the time because I've been away from it for a while.
Yeah.
And, I was like, "Oh, man, what a mess they've created." And so I launched a new business, and friends of mine from the old legal services company left, went to an anti-aging, startup company. They're like, "We're try this," I tried the cream, it worked. We did $100 million the first full year in business, and I was like, "Wow." And so it was a great opportunity that came my way, and that's the thing, when you're sometimes we hold on to stuff for so long, way past its expiration date, right? It's just like
Yeah.
sometimes the universe just says, "Let go, I gotcha." And it felt like that's what happened to us. So, it took us a while to recover, but, it was the best decision ever.
Yeah. So talk more about that idea of letting go, releasing.
Yeah, well, it kind of dives into another topic. I know we you had mentioned we wanted to discuss, and that's change, right? Fortunately, I like change. I don't really like those kinds of changes, right? But the older you get, you realize they do happen, and there was something similar that happened, not to that extreme. Fast forward, 8 years later in 2018 when that the company that I had started, just I was terminated from it for no fault of my own. We lost multiple six-figure income overnight, out of the blue, and thankfully we were ready that time. We had a plan B. We had done some things differently to make sure that all our eggs were not in that basket, and it really
Yeah.
saved us. It could have easily been a repeat of what had happened 8 years
Yeah.
earlier.
What,
So
so that was in 2008, 16,
18. Yeah.
18.
We
Okay.
had just moved. Thank goodness we had gotten back, we were making good income again. Tom retired from the company that he worked with after 2 years. We dug out. I mean, we were below zero. I think we were like, I don't know, 70, 80,000 in credit card debt plus the houses. I was able somehow to, do loan modifications or short sales or nothing got went into foreclosure. Nothing got foreclosed on. Well, I was able to save everything. Um, but, we were living in South Florida. Northwest Florida was too cold. Southwest Florida was too old. So we were like, we got to get out of here. We're going to die. There are obituary notices every week in the yacht club that we belonged to. And, the average age was like 70 in the town that we were at. At this point, I was like 55. He was 65. And so I'm like, honey, we got to get out of here. We're going to die. And so I go, let's go to Isla. And we had stopped in Isla Mujeres. Isla Mujeres, that's how you pronounce it. The J is
Okay.
pronounced with an H. And I'd been going there since 1992. It was my happy place on the planet. A lot of incentive trips in our network marketing career were in Cancun. We'd always go. This is a long ways to go from California. So we'd go 4 days and spend on the island. We'd always look at real estate and what are they building, and condos and this and that, just kind of dream a little bit. So when we had recovered, we got ready to buy again. We looked at property all the way from Sarasota, Bradenton down to Naples. Everything was $1 million because we had our big sailboat. We wanted our boat out front. That's why we
Yeah.
came because you can't do that in Newport Beach, right? So I'm like, honey, I got a bad feeling about this. I don't want to do this. This is, hurricane insurance, real estate taxes for waterfront. I mean, you're talking $1,000 a month before you ever think about a mortgage. I go, let's go to Isla Mujeres and check it out. But just, I guess the ability to understand that change is inevitable and not fight it. I mean, just say, okay, keep the curiosity, keep the fear at bay, right? Have the courage to go, okay, I know there's something really cool waiting for me. and not fear what comes. And there's so much we can control. I mean, you watch the news feed today and it's doom and gloom. And, I mean, no wonder people are so suicidal, right? Like, stay off social media, stay off the news feed. Sometimes you just got to turn it off and really focus on the positive. There's so many good things going on in the world today. And, you know, really monitor that input, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so if you well, that was a life-changing thing that happened with Tom and I, even before we got married. When I started with the first network marketing company, the legal services company, we gave up the LA Times. Every morning it was breakfast and bombings. And I'm like, this is not good for us. And so we just started reading personal development books, 10 pages of a good book a day, 30 minutes to start your day. Like, turn that other stuff off. If it bleeds, it leads. So just get it out of your life. And, I still, because of the work that I do, especially, I mean, I still pay attention to it, but you got to filter that stuff. Like, you got to really be discerning about what it is you allow in to your brain space.
Yeah. What well what would you say, so you've gone through all these experiences. What would you say, let's say we can't know the future, but let's say something like the crash of 2008 is coming our way. We don't know when, right? But cycles come and go, right? So it's at some point it's going to happen. What advice would you give for people to, one, prepare for that, and two, in the middle of it, how to survive that?
Great question, and I got a great answer. And the biggest thing, one of the things that drives me crazy is the lack of financial education, the lack of financial literacy. People do not take the time to learn I mean, those who refuse to learn from history are destined to repeat it, right? So, one of the things, when I started my legal career, I actually started in the mining industry. I worked with a gentleman who had been in that industry for decades, and we were actually doing engineering, procurement, and construction contracts for 20 million to $2 billion mining facilities, namely copper, gold, and silver. So
Yeah.
I got an introduction to that's a 5,000-year-old industry.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's, hyped on tech, the big 7 tech companies and stock. I was practicing law in 2000 as a securities lawyer. I saw the behind the scenes with the dot com, dot bomb
Yeah.
crash. And they were fundamentals. There was no revenue, much less any profit with these companies. And yet they're selling stock options, and the only asset they had was a domain name because everybody thought that was cool. And so you see these cycles, and we're kind of seeing it with AI, in my opinion. It's like, oh, AI, it's the bomb, it's going to make us all rich and all this potential. And maybe, there's certainly are opportunities there. I use it. I think it's wonderful. I use it as a tool to help me, ideate, come up with ideas and headlines and copywriting particular. I'm a pretty good writer anyway. I went to an event last week, actually a networking event, and the speaker was talking about how you can't let it overtake your voice. Like, it is a tool, but you tweak it, you make it, you don't copy and paste what it puts out there. And for heaven's sakes, don't rely on their citations. We were just seeing that, right? Make sure that it's real. And sometimes I'll say, okay, use this format, and it'll come up with stories. And I'm like, is this a real story? And they're like, well, no, it's not really a real story. It's a compilation. I'm like, no, 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 no. I want real stories. I want live human beings, and you need to tell me where these stories came from. And so it's kind of learned.
Yeah.
You got to slap that thing around a little bit sometimes. Like I said, it's a tool. It's not in charge. The financial literacy, and then I'm a big believer in precious metals. There's actually a whole chapter in Claim Your Dream Life on taxes and finances, and with the idea of being, it's not how much you make. I mean, we've made a lot of money. It's how much you keep, right? And what you have, and especially as you get older, obviously, in retirement. But if you understand fiat currency, if you understand deficit spending, if you understand the debt and how much the debt eats up our GDP in the United States, I mean, it's frightening. And it's happened many, many times through history. And if you understand that fiat currency never lasts, I mean, even within the United States, a lot of people don't know there have been multiple iterations, right, of currency. The founder said, no fiat currency. It has to be backed by gold. What happened? Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. You look at you can look at the financial charts. How much, is the price of what's the price of gold compared to the dollar? You can see that's why everything's so expensive. And if you understand that, first of all, it's going to help protect you personally. You're going to be able to make better decisions about where you invest and how you invest, but also you're going to be a better voter. You're going to be a better taxpayer because the politicians aren't going to be able to lie to you about what's happening. I mean, have you ever seen a politician that wants to spend less? I mean, I mean, I don't want to get political, but I'm just saying it's both of them. It's all of them. It's like, let's get in and spend. And why? Because that's how they get reelected, pet projects, all of that stuff. So I think that piece of it is so important. And one of my big pet peeves is people not taking ownership of their own finances. Oh, I let my financial planner take care of that. Oh, I let my accountant take care of that. How many celebrities do we hear about who get taken to the cleaners by their trusted advisors, right? Because they're not paying attention to what's going on behind the scenes. And I mean, Bernie Madoff, you can go on down the line, the times it happens. And so, what I tell people is there is nobody that cares more about your finances and your investments than you do.
Yeah.
Nobody, right? So it's taking that ownership, taking that responsibility to educate yourself. And I'm not talking about watching TikTok videos. Like, I mean, do some real digging, some real, economics. There's plenty of sources out there. I mean, Warren Buffett, he's a pretty smart guy. He's published a lot of material. There are sources of great information out there on that topic.
Yeah.
It's not sexy, but it's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. Being a student again. And that kind of ties to the next question I'm gonna ask you about, reinvention. So, I'm 40 now. I turned 40 last year. And I've come to realize just how important it is to be willing to reinvent ourselves and to actually go through that process over and over, which can be very painful. So talk to us about reinvention, particularly as it relates to getting older in our life.
Yeah, so um, I've done it so many times that it's like the good news is if you do it enough, it really is a skill that you can develop. And so I started my career in real estate really because when I was 16 years old, 1978, I worked at a real estate company. Back then, believe it or not, even that recently, the career options for women were not very good. I mean, my mom was a secretary, the nurse, teacher, the kind of more stereotypic doors were starting to open, but really it was really before the women's movement really got. And so I watched these successful female realtors, right, making as much money as men, having their time freedom, being paid what they're worth because it was on commission. And I was like, I want to do that. And so that's kind of how I went into my career. Fortunately, my mother-in-law um, at the time said, I know you love my son, but I really think you should go to college. I had no background in college in my whole family, not one person, my entire family, aunts, uncles, cousins, nobody had ever been to college. I was blue collar all the way. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm kind of bored with school, but I'm like, okay. And I had Pell Grants. I was able to go to the University of Minnesota, go first. And I got a degree in anthropology. And when I got out of college, I ended up working in loan servicing. She actually helped get me a job. And then I got my real estate license. I went into mortgage banking. I was doing sales for a while. I did property management. So I kind of really learned all facets of that industry. And I liked it. I like people. I like the transactional nature of it. Um, and I was happy doing that. Well, then I put my first husband through medical school. We did high school, college, medical school, residency. See ya. I know you've heard that story before. So here I am in SoCal, working on straight commission, which is fine when when your husband's a, six-figure earner. But being by myself, I was like, I'm tired of the roller coaster ride that is real estate, right? And so in a moment of insanity, I decided I was going to go to law school. And I didn't want to
How
do
old were you at the
litigation.
time?
I was 30 at the time. 31. And I did the 2.5 year suicide program. I got in and out, passed the bar the first time, and then really landed that dream job. But I quickly discovered I practiced for about 7 years. Um, like I said, was a securities lawyer long enough to know I never wanted to be a securities lawyer. Um, Crazy. Think the tax code is complicated. Try securities. And I hated being chained to a desk. Basically, I was, a transactional attorney. I was pumping out legal documents 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I had, the billable hour quota. And I'm like, this is not what I want. Right. And so it was the reason I wanted out of it was the lifestyle because I quit. Well, first of all, people used to tell me all the time, they're like, Dawn, you don't seem like a lawyer. And I go, that's because I'm not. It just happens to be what I do for a living, right? There's a difference. Having that whole ego wrapped up around it. That was never me. And so while I was really, this is a big lesson. I was really good at it. I was a really good contracts attorney. But just because you're good at something, if it doesn't light you up, if it doesn't bring you joy, if it's not ultimately going to get you where you want to be in life, why bother? I mean, so what happened? This is kind of a funny story. I do share it in Claim Your Dream Life, but I affiliated with this legal services company because, of course, people think you're an attorney. They think you know everything: divorces, DUIs, bankruptcy, landlord tenant, like you name it, right? And I'm like, well, I can help you with a corporation or a contract, and so I affiliated with this company that helped people at a very affordable price access legal services. And I was like, yeah, I can sell that because I turn away business every single day when my phone rings. So I didn't really understand how it worked, but I knew it did work because all the people that I put into the program, I called them back and I'm like, did it work? And they're like, yeah, it was great. He called me right back, and I'm like, okay, attorneys not returning their phone calls, the number one complaint that the state bars get. I mean, nationwide, right? Why are these people calling you back? So my girlfriend says, hey, there's a convention in Las Vegas. You want to go? And I go, oh, no, Kristen, I don't want to go to Vegas. I hate Vegas. It's smoky. Back in the day, everybody smoked. It's noisy. It's dirty. There's pornography all over the sidewalk. It's nasty, right? I'm like, nah, I don't want to go to Vegas. She goes, oh, come on. It'll be fun. But I was curious. And I'm like, all right, who are these people? What are they about? So I go, life changing. Here's another tip. Sometimes you go to an event, you don't want to go because you just never know, right? The keynote speaker at that conference was Robert Kiyosaki. And if anybody has not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I highly recommend it. It changed my life because I sat there thinking I had reached nirvana as an attorney, right? Where you basically own your own job. And I'm hearing about B quadrant and I quadrant business owners and investors. I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me that? I just spent all this money and I invested all this time in law school and I just own my own job. Like, how did this happen? Why didn't someone tell me? And I was kind of pissed sitting there going, you know, this is what rich people teach their kids. But obviously I didn't grow up rich. So, but I knew I had the opportunity. I had a network marketing business at the time, and I had actually recruited like 80 people. And it was in April. And I said, I told her, I said, don't ask me to go to those meetings, nothing. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not shaking the tambourine, and I am not shaving my head. But I went to this convention. I went home. I'm like, okay, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm shaking and so I did everything they told me to do. And you know what? The end of that year, I closed my law practice. I replaced my income, my full first year full time. And it was the best thing I could have done. And I did that for a few years. And then I shared with you that, the bottom fell out because I was doing the employee benefit. I was basically a sales rep, but you know what the beauty is? I still get paid today for the work that I did,
Yeah.
residual income, because it's like an insurance
Yeah.
product, right? And
Okay.
so that's another thing. If you can find a way to earn residual income, I'm all about it. I don't trade time for money anymore, but I'm all about the residual income, whether it's royalties from creative works or making money while you sleep. People think it's not possible. I'm here to tell you it is definitely possible. The first time that happened to me, I was like, oh my God, I made money while I was sleeping. I had done a commission split with another agent, and she did the sales presentation. I landed the account, and we were on vacation here, actually in Minneapolis, and she called me and she's like, "Okay, I signed up this many people." Let me tell you, I never made money while I was sleeping as a lawyer,
Yeah.
ever. So that was a really pivotal point in time. But then after, then I knew that was not like that wasn't it, right? There's something more. And so I had an opportunity to go. One of my clients was a bank in Orange County. They used to do networking events once a month. They'd bring in a speaker and they'd have wine and cheese and to
Yeah.
grow their banking customers. And a friend of mine, a gal I had befriended, she says, "Oh, we got this guy coming, and you should come." And I looked at it and I go, "When is it?" She told me it was on my birthday, and I'm like, "It's my birthday." She's like, "No, you can go to dinner afterwards." This is like a 5 o'clock, like happy hour thing, right? And I'm like, I don't know if I. So I dragged my husband along. So I ended up meeting the speaker. He gave a great talk on the importance of mentorship, and I did have a mentor. The gentleman that I went to work with as a lawyer, the first job I landed, turned out to be an incredible mentor to me. I'd learned so much from him. But it had been quite a few years. One of my mentors in the legal services industry had actually died at age 44 of pancreatic cancer. I lost him. So I was kind of a little bit lost. And I got to thinking, like, oh, you know what? He's right. I need a mentor. I really connected with this guy. So I met him for coffee. I said, "Hey, Steve, it was great hearing you speak. Could I meet you for coffee?" Met at Starbucks. And I just asked him, I just said, "Would you consider mentoring me? I really, resonated with what you had to say." Well, thank God I had asked him before I really knew that much about him because they gave him a nice introduction. But after I had already asked him, I saw his bio and it was so intimidating. I was like, Jason, I would have never asked him to mentor me if I had seen that bio first. But he really helped me. He put me through an exercise that I now teach, and it's called your freedom formula. And it's basically matching up your skills and your passions and finding work that
Yeah.
resonates. It sounds simple, but it actually took me a while to figure out, like to noodle it and think about how you could possibly pull those things together. But here's what it does for you. If you can do that, even if it's not like set in stone or it's a little bit vague, what ended up happening to me is when we got to Panama City, and like I said, I'm dealing with these foreclosures, and my friends called me about this business opportunity. I had already done that work, and so I already knew some of my passions and skills. They actually lined up quite nicely. We're meeting new people,
Yeah.
networking, right? Speaking, teaching, training, all that stuff. I really enjoyed that. I was a corporate trainer for the company, the legal services company. So when this opportunity came along, and I looked at it, and I thought about what I would actually be doing with that company, it lined up perfectly with my freedom formula. And I knew it was a yes. So if you do that work, then when an opportunity comes that way, it could just be a job. It might be a side gig. It might be, a company that you want to build, up to something serious. But whatever it is, if you can kind of match those up, it just makes your life so much better. I mean, it sucks to have a job that you hate. Life is way too short to not
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and go, "Oh my God, I get to go to work today." Right?
Yeah.
And I know it's not easy for everybody, and I've certainly had moments in my life and jobs in my life where that hasn't been the case. But to me, that's really important. It's just going to make you a happier person. It's going to make you more successful. All the things. It's just a really important exercise. I encourage everybody to do.
Yeah. So you wrote this book and you talk about living the dream life. And you have this idea of sailing around the world and living in Mexico. People that are interested in taking that step, like, or doing that, what would be your recommendation? What's the question you would ask that person that would get you to think about the things you need to think about? What would be your advice?
Well, one of the things that and this kind of really I talk about it in the book a little bit, but wherever you go, there you are, right? So you have to be running to something. It's not such a good idea to be running away from something, right? Because it's going to follow you. And eh, paradise is really internal. You really have to find your internal paradise and not think that geography is going to solve all your problems. I call it pulling a location, right? You can change things up, move to a different spot, but if you're still there, right? So that's an important thing to understand is to make sure that that's not what you're doing. The clarity I talk about it, this is what I learned from the first gentleman that I worked with. He used to talk about fundamental interests because we did a lot of contract negotiation. You have to find out what their fundamental interest is. Like, what's the one thing that they really want?
Yeah.
Because he really believed in the win-win, and I do too. So you got to figure out, okay, what's their win, and then what's our win? What are our non-negotiables? And it's true as an individual. It's true as a couple, right? I mean, and a classic example is my husband Tom took me sailing our first two dates to make sure that I didn't get seasick because he would have kicked me to the curb. Like that was a fundamental. He was sailing, he was racing at the time. He was sailing like 4 or 5 days a week. He was living on his
Yeah.
boat, going out every weekend. And the last thing he needed was a girlfriend who would get seasick. I don't want to go sailing. I mean, that was an important thing to him. So, and me, I'm a cat lover. Like if I meet a guy and oh, I'm allergic to cats, bye. That's not going to work. Like so there's certain things that are important to us and we have to recognize those and make sure that we take those into account. Or particularly in a couple situation, it may not work. But figuring out those things, what are your non-negotiables is really important. um, I don't do snow. I left Minneapolis when I was 28 years old. I said, I don't want to shovel. I don't, and I met Tom. He was a black diamond skier. And I said, listen, you got to understand something. I don't like snow. I like it as much as I can see it on the mountaintops from here, where we are in the city of Orange. Don't ask me to go up to the lodge with you. I'm not going to wait for you. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to see it. No. And I had, 28 years on. And he said, well, my knees are getting kind of bad anyways. So he took up golf and tennis, which were sports that I enjoyed. So really, I think it is really important as a couple. But, and then, identify a couple of places. I mean, that's the thing. Dreaming is free. I mean, and the internet's great, right? I used to build dream boards, the magazines, you cut pictures out of magazines and paste them on, board. We don't have to do that anymore. We can just go online and search images. And I have screensavers with my dreams, the things I want next. I got my next car is flashing across my screen on my computer. And so we can it really stimulates your subconscious and helps your subconscious because your subconscious doesn't speak in words. Your subconscious speaks in images. And so, I mean, we dream, right? We don't dream
Yeah.
in words, we dream in images. And so, if you want to communicate with your subconscious to help you get what you want, you have to speak its language, and its language is images. And so, I'm a big believer in dream boards. I painted a mural in my house in Orange. It was an ocean front, and it
Yeah.
looks almost identical to what we have in East Lamar. It's really spooky how this stuff works. I won't get too
Yeah.
woo woo for you, but there are things you can do. But and then what I recommend, the process I recommend in my program is one, vacation with a purpose. Like if you're working a job and you only get like a 1 or 2 week vacation, like don't just go to some place that, oh, it'd be fun to go there. Go somewhere where you're seriously thinking you might want to live,
Yeah.
right? Now it's not the same being on vacation as it is living there, obviously. But then the next step after that is to do what I call a beta test. And that's a 1 month, 2 month, as long as you can, try it before you buy it, right? Go live like a local. Go rent an apartment, a short term rental apartment. Go to the market. Do the things that you would do if you're living there to try it out and say, could I live here? And then I always, always recommend rent before you buy. We rented a couple of beautiful oceanfront homes in Florida. Now, obviously, with the credit situation, we weren't buying those and, we didn't have the money. But even if we had, we wouldn't have because we didn't end up liking the area. The Panhandle, it was nice the first winter we were there. The second winter, it was in the 30s. They use the words
Yeah.
wind chill in the winter weather forecast. Who knew? I said, honey, I can't do this. And so then we went to South Florida. We tried that. We lived there for 4 years. And it was nice, but it's still, it's the old Goldilocks method. Try this one. Oh, that one's too soft. That one's too hard, right? Look for
Yeah.
that match. And I know, some people, if you have kids or whatever, it's not as easy to do that. But my market is really mostly the kids are grown, and so you're kind of looking for that next place.
Yeah. So you're someone who talks about retirement, but has a interesting relationship with the word. So talk to us about the evolution of retirement and what it looks like now and what it's going to look like in the future.
Yeah, Jason, I believe the soul did not come here to retire. And one of my YouTube videos that I created recently, just released recently, was why do so many people die right after they retire? And it's, really the lack of purpose. And so in the research that I've done, especially in the last year since I launched my channel, is as it turns out, everybody's worried about money in retirement, money, money, finances. Oh, you need $1 million, million and a half dollars, blah, blah. No, as it turns out, most people don't fail financially, they fail psychologically. And that is, there's so much that you lose that you don't realize that you're going to lose in retirement. Whether it's your identity, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that, right? Or, it's the power, it's the relationships. A lot of people have their social circle is connected to work and work friends and so forth. And, having a reason to get up. I did another video talking about this. I came across a story. This woman who was 60 years old had worked very hard her whole life in a hospice. In fact, ran a hospice. I mean, important work, right? Really helping the transition. And she was so looking forward to retirement, and the woman ended up going into a deep depression. And 6 months after she retired, she committed suicide. Just that not really knowing what to do with themselves, right? And so one thing people need to understand is retirement is a fairly recent concept. It really came about in this country after World War II as a way to get people to leave the workforce when all the soldiers came back, right? The factories were filled with, women and, people who were too old for the service. And then all these, GIs come back and they need work. So it's like, oh, let's have this retirement thing, right? And so it's a fairly new concept. I mean, in many cultures, like the Mexican culture is a perfect example. You've got multi-generational households all living together. Grandma takes care of the kids. They don't have a child care problem, right? The parents work. Even the children, everybody contributes. And it's this extended family unit. And sometimes they live together, sometimes they live next to each other, right? They're
Yeah.
close to, but they all take care of each other. They all have their purpose. Their elders are honored, right? It's not all about the youth and beauty and, oh, we'll discard you when you get old. Let's go put you in some assisted living facility and, not have the activities. And it just makes such a difference. My mother is 83 years old. My stepfather, who's passed now, uh, threw her an 80th birthday party. My two brothers from here, and I came up from Mexico with my husband. We went to this 80th birthday party for her. And one of my brothers leans over and he says, Dawn, he goes, our mom doesn't seem any different at age 80 than she was at age 60. I said, I know, isn't that awesome? And she is actually, I think it's coming up this next weekend, taking care of a woman who is going to turn 100. She's known her for 25 years. They became friends. Her and her husband were friends with my mom and dad when they all moved to Tucson. And they used to play shuffleboard together and go bowling together and all that. And she doesn't have any children. She doesn't have anybody to take care of her. She's fine financially. Like she'll never run out of money. She's in a very nice assisted living facility, but mom like opens her mail and manages her bank account and helps, goes buys whatever she needs, whether it's lotions or, whatever. And it gives my mom meaning. She's also the treasurer of the shuffleboard team. Like she used to do taxes for H&R Block. She's the money lady, right? And so she's dealing with all these people. When I go visit her for 2 weeks, which I usually do in February, that's when her birthday is, I have to get out her calendar and we have to schedule our spa day because we have to work it around her social schedule and her bridge and her Mexican train and all these things. And it's in the place that she lives, it's this huge over 55 community that's like RVs and park models and condos and single family homes, which is where she lives. But they have like live music every Wednesday, live concerts, great like cover bands that they bring in and things. And she's just so active in and has that purpose, right? Was taking care of another lady who passed a couple of years ago. Same thing. She was well off financially, but no children. And so mom was there as a friend and also just a helper to make this woman's life a little bit easier. And family was out of state. And so she helped just manage her affairs. It I'll tell you, when I met Lois, I really didn't want to go. Like, she wanted me to go meet this woman, and I'm like, "Oh, mom, don't make me go to the old folks home," that kind of thing. And I was so glad I did because I got to witness these two women interact, and I saw the love between them and the appreciation that Lois had for my mother, but also I could see how much it meant to my mom
Yeah.
to be able to help this woman. And so we don't put enough emphasis on that, particularly when you're talking about retirement. I mean, that community, that social aspect of it is probably that, and also the one of the things that will help you live longer is if you have a positive outlook on aging. Age
Okay.
statistically will live 7 years longer than someone who has a negative view of aging. So that
So if
old
you're,
age is just a
yeah,
number, right?
yeah. So what does that specifically look like for you?
Well, so I'm really excited about the scientific advances that are coming along, whether it's gene repair or treatment options. I mean, we are all energy. A lot of the work that we're seeing, the scientific breakthroughs are coming out on the energetic level. But I read a study this year that came out, and I'm one of these nerds that like actually doesn't just read the article about the study. Like, I go find the medical study and actually
Read
read
the
that.
research
I
paper.
mentioned my first husband was a doctor, so I almost went to medical school.
So you must love ChatGPT for that because it helps you dive into all the details.
I haven't used it for that, but that's a
Okay.
great idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, have ChatGPT. Oh, that'll save me. That's a
Because it
big
can
time save.
summarize it, or you can actually, what does this mean? Yeah. It's great
A
for
good
research
idea.
papers. Yeah.
But anyway, that particular article that really caught my eye was about how they have discovered that our cells actually have the ability to regenerate themselves all the way up to 120 to 150 years. So, people like my classmates were coming up on my 45th class reunion, and I want to slap my classmates when they say, "I'm old." I'm like, "No, you're not old. If we can live to 120, like 60 is only halfway." Right? So really reframing what aging means and what's possible. One of my mentors used to say, "We dig our grave with our teeth." We
Okay.
dig our graves with our teeth, right? We have we can control what we put in our bodies. We can control
Oh,
how much
okay.
we move, right? So, and I'm really concerned about these weight loss drugs. I've talked to my sister-in-law is a chiropractor, and we've talked about it a little bit. And she said, I'm really concerned. There are some things that, if they happen, they're irreversible with some of these weight loss.
Yeah. Like we don't know all the
We don't
effects
know.
that,
This is
yeah.
one big clinical trial that's going on with a lot of people. And I don't know if you may be too young to remember fen, but a friend of mine from law school took that. It was a combination of pills that were weight loss.
Okay.
Turned out they led to heart problems.
Oh, so you get a
And
benefit, but you have a trade-off. Yeah.
big class action lawsuit. Oh, you didn't tell us. We thought we were just going to get skinny. We didn't know our heart was going to get damaged. Well, I mean, you got to look out for those. I don't, that's a whole nother story. We'll go down that rabbit hole, but
Really.
I'm not real big on big pharma. There's a lot of things out there that have been around for thousands of years, and they'll extract them or whatever. But we have, really taking ownership of that, our health. I've done a couple of podcasts on that topic, and really talking about how that, you want to talk about investing for retirement, like that's your number one asset is your health, right? You have your health. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how much money you have if you don't have your health.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, that,
part of the
go ahead.
reason we ended up in Atlanta is because my great grandmother lived here. She was 99 when we moved here, and she lived another 10 years. So just a few weeks.
Longevity genes, dude. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we got to spend I didn't ever really, I never met her, I didn't know her, but I got to spend 10 years of her last 10 years. Her and her daughter, my mom's aunt and uncle. And so, yeah, that was, like her husband died, I think when she was 60 something. So like she lived an entire lifetime without
Yes.
her husband. It's just
Right.
wild to think. Yeah.
Isn't that something? Yeah, and I mean, and I've studied the blue zones, and there's a lot of data on that, kind of what the components are. And so it's really about implementing some of the things that are known. I mean, all of this, sometimes we feel like we're, not in control. And I've certainly felt that way. I mean, there have been some things going on in my life, even fairly recently, like that I just can't control. And COVID's a perfect example. Like we couldn't control COVID. Like COVID hit us all, and but what I did when that happened, I went back to the success system that I learned decades ago, and that is basically planning. You can't manage time, right? But you can manage yourself. And so when I realized, oh my gosh, this could go on for a while, and it did. I went on, really for more than a year, almost 2 years. It impacted us. We didn't have a guest in our hotel in Eastland
Yeah.
Mujeres for 6 months. The last one left out in March, and we didn't get anybody till October. But I looked at it as an opportunity. A lot of people binge watch Netflix, gained all kinds of weight, eating comfort food and all that. And so I thought, okay, what can I do that I couldn't do before, right? And one of the things was, this was a fun project. There's 11.5 foot ceiling wall in the pool patio, and it was screaming for a mural. I like to paint, as it turns out. I didn't really study art or anything, but I enjoy it. So I painted. Well, my husband built a scaffolding because he didn't, I couldn't reach the top. And he put a railing around it so I wouldn't fall in the pool. And went out and painted every day. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed that because we were always booked. I didn't have
Yeah.
the opportunity to paint a mural like that with all the guests. And so I did that. But that's actually where I developed the workshop that ultimately became the book, because that's what
Okay.
happened. And so I'll tell you the story about that. Playa Norte has since we bought the property in 2016 has been ranked the number one beach in all of Mexico. Of course, I knew that back in 1992. It's why it was one of my favorite
I have
places.
some friends that live in Playa del Carmen, so they're not too far.
Yeah, and that's Sargasso City. All that with seaweed washes in, and it stinks to high heaven. Isla doesn't get that because the beach
Okay.
is protected by the reef, and then because it's an island, the waves wash away the Sargasso, and they go onto the mainland. But at any rate, we would go to the beach just to relax, and my husband's never met a stranger, so he'd go in the water and he would strike up conversations with random individuals. And in part, it was to market our property, right? Because it was like we get a lot of day trippers. There's actually about 25 to 30,000 visitors a day that visit
Oh,
this little
really?
island that's 4.3 miles long.
Yeah.
So he was prospecting, right? And we're network marketers too. So he knows how to prospect. So he would strike up conversation. Where are you from? Have you been here before? Are you staying on the island? You day trip, whatever. And after, and then of course, what do? They would ask him, well, where are you from? And he'd go, well, I live here. And they would go, what? You live here? And he would say, yes, we own a hotel, or house at the time, um, on the Caribbean side. What? You bought property? You mean you can own property in Mexico? How does that work? Okay. So this was about 100 conversations. Like this just
Yeah.
kept happening over and
Yeah.
over and over. And so I went, wow, people really seem to be interested in what we're doing here. So during COVID, that was actually when I developed, I found this business coach. I had already been doing my podcast for a while. I had kind of dipped my toes in online business. The first product I created was basically a real estate program because people kept asking me, how do you buy real
Yeah.
estate in Mexico? So I created this,
Yeah.
fairly inexpensive product to explain all that. Um, and then I launched the free workshop in July of 2020. What it was called, how to live in paradise without worrying about the price tag. Because you couldn't use the word money for the Facebook ads, right?
Okay.
And so you had to like work around that. So, and that ultimately became the book. But it was really blowing out the myths, oh, the healthcare is not as good. Oh, it's too
Yeah.
expensive. I can't afford it. Oh, there's not as much opportunity, like all the things. And I would basically walk them through the process. Like, here's what we did to determine that this was a good move for us. And so this is what I recommend you go through the process and figure these things out. And then part of it obviously is having the income that will
Yeah.
allow you to live anywhere. So getting into that a little bit. But then when it came time to write the book, my girlfriend told me about this write a book in a weekend workshop, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. And then when I got the homework, it wasn't just write a book in a weekend; it was write a book that sells. And I said, if I write a book, I guess I'd like to sell it. So they gave us this framework, and it was very specific. And I took one look at it, and I said, this is my workshop.
Yeah.
This is totally my workshop. And so I don't do the workshop anymore because it's in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No,
it's the
that's similar.
whole
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to I wrote a book, Path of the Freelancer,
Ah, perfect.
and it's very similar. It's like I used to have a marketing agency, and then I jumped into freelancing, and I became very successful at it. And I had people like, "How are you doing this? And how are you doing that?" And then it's like, "Okay, I better put all this in a book, and then I can just sell you the book."
Right. Yeah. And it's,
Yeah.
it's better for them too. It's like, you don't have to, and then I even recorded my own audiobook. So
Okay. Wow. Cool.
you can listen to me tell you about it and walk you
Yeah.
through it in my
Yeah.
voice. So
Yeah. That's exciting.
that was fun.
Well, as we wrap up here, what final anything you wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to yet?
Gosh, we covered a lot of ground here, didn't we? Um, yeah, I guess the thing I feel like that's calling me to share is don't pay attention to the outside noise. I mean, I heard this. I can't remember where I heard this. I love it though, and it was a saying that the mind shouts, the heart whispers, and so getting quiet enough to listen to that heart whispering to you is what I would encourage people to do because there's so much noise out there, right? I mean, the social media and the news and like all the stuff. And the speaker that I listened to last week, she was funny. She's like, I'm not going to talk about politics because I don't know anything about tariffs and it doesn't there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just not even going to worry about it. I'm not going to listen to it, right? Like turn it off. And, and then some people don't have that luxury obviously, but most of us I think do have the ability to just say, okay, what do I want and what do I need to do? What are the then I do this with my coaching clients. What are the obstacles in my way and how can we blow them out? How can we get those
Yeah. Well,
obstacles out?
yeah, I think that you kind of bring out a few little layers here throughout your conversation. One is you mentioned the deaths of despair, the lack of purpose, right? And then you mentioned the situation where this, this these people are telling you why it's not possible for you to do what you are currently doing, right? Like all of these reasons, and then you break it down and say, actually, you can do it. But I think when I hear all that, what I'm hearing is people don't there's something holding them back to to see what they want and to move towards what they want, because if we really want something, we'll work through the obstacles. But I think the fear is that it goes back to that despair, I think, which is if I really lean into what I want and then I realize I can't have it, then it'll just make me feel worse. What would you say to that? Am I hitting on something, or am I off the mark?
No, I think that's real. And so I'll go back to my mentor from the lawyer that I worked with, and he always said you need to make a plan. And when we put our business plan together, because he was all in, talk about all eggs in one basket in the mining industry, and then the price of gold dropped to below $300 an ounce, if you remember, in the late '90s. But we were in the middle of transitioning into more of an overall business transaction practice, and that was the vision I came to him with, and why he hired me. He's like, I used to have a practice like that, and so he ended up hiring me when it was an informational job interview, but he always said, as we were developing our plan, he said, you need to have a plan, kind of what we were talking about, the fundamental interests and identifying, kind of your sweet spot with what you want to do. And he said, you create a plan and you start marching forward. And it's the movement that
Agreed.
causes these other things to come at you from the side. And so it may not be that your original plan comes
Yeah.
to fruition, but if you didn't have that plan and you weren't moving forward, the cool thing would never appear.
Yeah, that's I can relate to that. Like I'll give you a recent example. So I've been podcasting since 2020, and I never really thought of YouTube as a business opportunity until the end of last year. Even though I was publishing my episodes on it. And then I started to I had a video that just kind of was like mini viral, and I didn't do anything. I was like, wait a second. YouTube is like promoting videos for free. I didn't realize it was doing that. And so it opened my eyes to this opportunity that if I hadn't been publishing videos, I wouldn't have discovered that. I mean, I was kind of late to figuring that out, but now that I see it, I go, oh, now I can actually play that game and lean into that. And to your point, it's like if I hadn't started the podcast, I may not have stumbled upon this other thing. And I can just think of a lot of examples. That's one recent one I can think of.
Yeah, it's that momentum,
Yeah,
and sometimes those first couple steps are really hard. I was terrified the very first podcast interview that I did.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't know, I mean, I'm like doing the research and but what saved me was curiosity. I I had natural curiosity. I kept meeting all these really cool people on the island that had amazing stories. Not all of them jumped on a sailboat and, sailed 5,000 miles through the Panama Canal to move to
yeah,
Mexico, but they had all these amazing stories and I wanted to hear them. Mostly, I wanted to hear them.
yeah,
Like, "How did you do it?
yeah,
What did you do differently?" And all that sort of stuff. So, the first woman I interviewed was a good friend of mine. She was an author, and she actually had, like, a consulting business and stuff. So, she was a pro, and so I'll never forget sitting in her apartment, and I'm, like, almost shaking, like, hitting the record button on the phone, right? And I once I did it, it was, like, such a huge and she was such a pro. Like, I just basically teed off one question, and she took it, and I asked a couple of questions, but it was mostly her. And I was so thankful after it was over, but it was like a the first time we do something, it's like it's so terrifying, and you just have to, like, have the courage to push through that
yeah,
fear and do it, and then you go, "Oh, that wasn't so bad." Or what I tell people is, Imagine what's the worst thing that could have happened," right? I mean, okay, so I blew the interview and, I actually had an interview that went really bad. The woman's dogs were barking the whole time, and I was over there talking to her. Published it. It's like, okay, throw that one out, right? I mean, so you kind of have to go in with it and a lighter attitude about it and not take yourself so seriously.
yeah, yeah. Kind of being willing to put yourself out there when you're not perfect, I think, is a big step required.
John,
And
I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. Failing Forward is one of his
yeah,
books. If you're afraid of
yeah,
failure, Mike, that is such a great book
yeah,
to read because that's the only way you get there. I mean, you talk to any successful entrepreneur. I mean, they may tell you, oh, this is my fifth or sixth business. I had four businesses that failed, and then but I kept trying.
yeah,
Fall down on the bike, you get back up, you skin your knee a little bit, put a band-aid on it, like keep going.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. I interviewed Stephen Puri on the podcast recently, and that's what he said. He used to be a movie studio executive producer, and I asked him how, like, what determines whether someone's successful in Hollywood, and he said the resilient ones, the ones that get rejected, make improvements, and they keep going, they far surpass the people that have a lot of talent because
Yep.
they just keep going.
Yeah, resilience and persistence, you know?
Yeah,
Just keep at it. Yeah.
yeah. So, who's a good fit to pick up your book or coaching services, or and where do they learn about these things or find them?
Well, my target market for my the book actually it's kind of funny. I mean, I've had even people in their 20s say how impactful the book is. I mean, it's you're not too early to start planning your future, right? And
Yeah,
getting what you want, and going for those dreams. And I've had clients into their 70s as well. But my sweet spot is really kind of that 45 to 65 age range, either thinking about retirement, may want early retirement. I One couple that I worked with wanted to do early retirement. They came to me with a 5-year plan. We worked through the program and their timeline just kept shrinking and shrinking, and ultimately they did it in 10 months. I mean, they
wow.
shrunk it from 5 years to 10 months, and it was really the clarity. It's just them getting clear on what
Yeah.
it was they wanted and all of that. So anybody that wants clarity, really, but particularly the folks, our sweet spot really, Tom and I didn't have anything saved for retirement. I mean, like I told you, we were financially wiped out in 2008, 2010, and had virtually no retirement savings at age 50 and 60. So those are the folks I think I really am passionate about helping because they might feel like, oh, it's a lost cause for me. I'm never going to have what I want, and I think that's just not true. I mean, we took our small, slow growing, sad nest egg, and basically cashed out our retirement and used it for the down payment for the house in Mexico and got seller financing because there's not really mortgages down there. And we've, improved it. Every dime we made the first 2 years, we put back into improving the property. We saw the potential for what it could be. And I actually did a YouTube video on this too. It's called How I Found a Dream Home to Fund My Retirement. And it's not
Okay.
a dream home like you think of, right? It's not a dream
Yeah.
home where you live. It's a dream home like this is what funds your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
but really
Which is
talking
the
about
Robert Kiyosaki idea, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, really seeing something that others walk by and don't notice. And we saw the potential of what it could be and then went about to do that. It's understanding that there's and especially you add in the life expectancy that we're talking about. I mean, if you're 60 or 65 years old and you think, "Oh, it's too late for me." Like, dude, you're just getting started. We've been all been gifted an entire adult lifetime, like you were talking about your grandmother, right? On top of what used to be 100 years ago, lifespan was 48 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what a drastic change that is and what a huge opportunity is for all of
Yeah.
us to really, reframe that whole process of aging and retirement and making money, really. And like you mentioned the YouTube, yeah. I mean, I'm still learning all about that. I That's one of the reasons I went all in on it a year ago. But even I just was at a watched a workshop this last weekend that was like mind blowing to me on potential that I didn't really know that was
Yeah.
there too. And you see these channels. I mean, which they were talking about one lady that has like a Florida tropical gardening channel that's
Uh-huh.
making like bank on, some affiliate things. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. YouTube is free and
Yeah.
it's the biggest search engine out there, second biggest search engine out there. And so I think maybe sometimes people are like, oh, I don't have the skills. I'm not technical, whatever. And, I'm sure you're familiar with Russell Brunson. He always talks about it's the who, not the how, right?
Yeah.
There's Fiverr. You can hire people to do some of these tech things if you don't want to do it. So there's just so many things there. But if you're just kind of stuck with blinders on and not really seeing the big picture of what's out there, that's the advantage of a coaching program, for example. And it's not just me, I don't claim to have all the answers, but it's that mastermind concept of being with people who also have that philosophy of potential, right? And
Yeah.
not restriction. Um, because
Okay.
I learned that in 2 decades of network marketing. Like your associations are everything.
Yeah.
Don't ask your broke brother-in-law whether this is a good business.
Yeah. If people want to connect with you, like what's your website? What social channels are you on? You're on YouTube. What else?
Sure, YouTube is probably the primary one because I've created so much free content there. You can really dive in, and there's links to my book on the channel as well. It's available on Amazon as well, wherever books are sold. It's widely distributed. I have a website called Paradise Roadmap that has some free resources there where people can learn a little bit more
So
about what I do.
paradiseroadmap.com. Cool. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and your insights. We appreciate it. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and this has been another episode of the Share Life Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.